When I was on the field tending to the injured, I saw how some from our camps treated the captives. They weren't even considered to be animals. No, they were seen less than that. They wouldn't even bother to spit in their mouths, even if they begged for water. I can somewhat understand this behavior. It was a frustrating war. Friends were lost. Families were severed. Of course, some would be angry, and you couldn't get angry at your superiors, right? What bothers me even now is the captives' behavior. They knew we didn't even have enough supplies for ourselves. So why did they bother to beg? I mean, they certainly saw how their comrades, who were handed a shovel, didn't come back after following the rifleman in the forest. You'd think that the rifleman coming back alone with the shovel in hand would be obvious enough. Oh, the woes of hope. So many years have passed since then. There was a time when we thought that those who died were the lucky ones. It all seems as though it were a distant nightmare. Thinking back now, despite the many horrors of war, I have had a good life over the years. I started a family. I manage a clinic, or a health care institution, as you would call it. I even had the joy of embracing my daughter, Maria. I wasn't the only one who prospered. My brothers in arms, those few who have survived, have found their own peace and fortune. Now, that time seems as though it were a dream. Why couldn't we just continue on like this? When the first bomb was dropped, we all saw the horrors and the pain that it caused. Yet, you just had to continue talking about it. You would announce how some other country has gotten its hands on it as well and keep us all alerted about it. We were all so scared. Soon, many years passed, more countries possessed it, and the news about it just became another announcement we would hear on the television, sort of like how a new grease ball is elected into whatever position in some other country. Wars were declared. Battles were fought. They were all reported to us, but there were just so many and so far away. I was always prepared. I never forgot. How could I? The instruction videos were always announced. My wife, on the other hand, would say that nothing will happen and that this is their way to remind us why we should be paying our taxes. I always hoped that she would be right, but there was always that chance. So I followed the news, the instructions, and the pamphlets. I trusted you, and I believed I was ready for what was to come, but I wasn't. We never were. My wife wasn't home when the sirens sounded. Perhaps she was one of the lucky ones. I was home watching a show about pigs and other animals when the emergency broadcast appeared. I knew what it was immediately and grabbed my daughter downstairs into the basement, where I had made my preparations. I attempted to call my wife, but she wasn't responding. After listening to the sound of my heart matching the rhythm of the dial, I did what I had to and barricaded the doors to the basement. A distant crack was heard, and soon, less than that, maybe 30 seconds later, a terrible wind flew in our way, with a force so fierce it felt more like a solid mass than wind. Everything on the surface was demolished. We could hear it, every wooden, metallic, and ceramic object being torn, shredded, or broken into pieces. We didn't feel safe either, for the ground was shaking the entire time. I feared the roof falling onto us, so I covered my daughter and curled up with her in a corner. I could feel Maria screech into me, but the sheer mass of destruction taking place upstairs obscured it from ever reaching my ears. I tightened my eyes and prayed that it would end, and suddenly it did. All was quiet, and if it weren't for my daughter, I don't think I would have realized it sooner. We sat in silence for a little while. Maria sat beside me with a toy in her hands. She held it so awkwardly that it seemed as if the toy's concept was alien to her. I, on the other hand, didn't know what to do. I realized that, despite memorizing every instruction from all the pamphlets and news articles, I wasn't prepared. Sure, we have the food and the water, but how should I rationalize it if I don't know when help will arrive? What if we run out of food? Should I go out and scavenge for some at the neighbor's place? What if they have none? Then, what about Lisa? Surely she wasn't answering her call because she was rushing to a shelter, right? What about the water? Daddy, Maria said, breaking my chain of thoughts. I looked at her and knew what she was going to ask. I didn't want to hear it. Where is Mama? She's at Uncle Briggs' house. I said this when she first asked the question. She's visiting grandmother Georgiana. I said 3 days later. Is Mama ever coming back? She finally asked. Lisa never answered the calls, but I couldn't tell her that. I said yes. She was crying that night. I don't think she even went to sleep. One day, I noticed the signal was back on. I browsed through countless sites. They were all saying the same thing. Help was coming. Stay inside. Give out your address and personal information on this website. We will send help as soon as we can. That gave me some hope, but when I saw the posts there, I knew this was just another way to keep us from being restless. I may sound pretentious saying all of this. You may call me a pessimist. I am not. I am being realistic. I never liked living in fantasy, imagining dragons, princesses, etc. No, they inspire hope, and hope, when there is too much of it, leads to disappointment. If there is one thing I agree with in those posts, it's that we just had to stay inside. We had to. We are fortunate enough to have supplies to last us a while. There is no reason for us to go outside. Eventually, they would send help. Even if that doesn't happen, we can only remain inside for at least a month. I could do it. We have ample food. However, it always seemed like we had too little water. It's really only something psychological, I thought. There were a dozen cans of food, and there were only 10 water containers. We actually had 190 liters of water. We had enough. I was too distracted. I woke up briefly 4 days ago. It was one of those moments of comfort where you just don't want to get up. I almost forgot about everything that had happened until I felt wind blowing on me. I jumped up and saw the door open. It was raining outside. I ran up the stairs and immediately shut it. Then I scanned the basement. No one broke inside. We weren't robbed. Maria was missing. Without thinking, I rushed outside without putting anything on. It was then that I finally had the chance to see the destruction. It was horrible. My house, and what remained of it, was in utter disarray. And when I finally stepped outside, my first farts were charred. It seemed like a plague. Everything was tainted by it. No being or thing, big or small, avoided its contamination. And the rain, its harbinger of doom, was the spreader of disease. I quickly came to my senses, and again found myself not knowing what to do. I ran 2 streets toward the left. Then I ran back and rushed to the opposite side. I couldn't find her. I was panting. Adrenaline was pumping in my veins. I didn't know what to do. As the wind blew past me, I came to understand dread. Suddenly, in the distance, I noticed her tiny silhouette approaching me, and I quickly ran up to her. She wanted to go back inside. She had seen enough. My daughter has passed away. She hasn't been feeling well since she came back. I tried to keep her as comfortable as I could. I knew we were lost the moment she mentioned how nauseous she felt. With her passing, the very last reason for my existence has disappeared as well. Thankfully, I, too, am sick, and I am not writing this for any help. So, why are you writing this then? Would be the first question a random guy on this website would ask. Where is your address? Would be what the eventual help would ask. I will not answer the latter, as there is no point in playing along with liars. But to those of you who are also on this website, I shall provide an answer to your curiosities. I am angry. That would be the short answer. I am furious. To think that the fate of me and my family is being decided by people who I don't even know, who I don't even have a chance to look into their eyes to as they press the button, which led to the deaths of everyone I know, who failed to keep their promises to keep us safe, who are now blaming those that are unprepared for the inevitable, and who have created this website for me to cry and shred the last bit of my dignity. I am disgusted and repulsed beyond any words I can come up with. I shall keep the last of my pride and pass away peacefully, knowing that I have said the last of what I have to say. Damn you to the deepest parts of hell. I will not beg for help.